A lot has happened in healthcare in the past 2 years, and a lot of changes have occurred as a result. Let's look at the most recent data to understand the current state of rehab. Let's start with the general demographic. The number of therapists continues to increase, with the most recent census showing the total number of physical therapists at 225,350. As for physical therapist assistants, they had a total number of 93,660. That's 30% of therapists in the field. The rehab field is fairly young, with the majority of workers being under the age of 40. Most of these individuals fall into the 27 to 33 age category. As for those over the age of 40, we see the majority falling into the 41 to 47 age group. Overall, rehab professionals are young, which will help sustain future demands. Trends in business and clinical practice were collected by WebPT and published in the 2022 State of Rehab report. This report surveyed people working in the field of rehab, from executives to students, to see what trends professionals faced in the field. Starting with annual revenue. Most businesses reported making $1 million or less annually. Salary trends from the data also showed an increase in revenue as the number of providers increased. On average, institutions with 150 providers or more reported making between $25 to $50 million annually, which, unsurprisingly, exceeded the other provider size groups. What was surprising was the lack of noticeable difference in the annual revenue between small and medium-sized institutions. Most institutions in these categories reported an annual revenue between $1 to $5 million. If revenue is supposed to increase with the number of providers, should the reported revenue for medium-sized groups not exceed the small-sized groups? In principle, yes, but there could be many reasons for this deviation in the trend. One reason, based on the data, could be reduced efficiency as the number of providers increases beyond a certain level, which then recovers at a higher threshold. Combining the data on the number of providers and annual revenue gives a clue on how revenue changes based on provider size. We see all groups having annual revenues of more than $100,000 per provider, except for the groups with 17 to 49 providers and 50 to 149 providers. This deviation suggests that adding more providers to a practice may not always be the most efficient route for growth. On the topic of efficiency, respondents of the survey ranked 5 key performance indicators as measures they are actively measuring. KPIs are measures used by administrations to assess how efficient their institution is. The KPI that was measured the most by respondents was visits per full-time therapist. Let's reflect on the other KPIs for a minute. As a business owner, which key performance indicators are you measuring, and which is the most important? As a therapist, what key performance indicators do you feel are important? Generally speaking, visits per full-time therapist is a KPI that clinicians and institutions clash on because of the potential for increased revenue per therapist, but at the cost of additional strain to the therapist. Respondents of this survey stated that they are seeing an average of 13 patients per day. This was true for small and large-sized institutions, but institutions with 50 to 149 providers reported an average patient caseload of 17 patients per day. The full report discusses many clinician trends, but we will talk about turnover rates, burnout, and salary since these are areas of high interest to many in the field. A large number of respondents reported they are considering a professional change. The most reported professional change sought was a change in work hours, but others were looking at other options outside their current role, with some even considering leaving healthcare altogether. 35% of respondents reported feeling burnt out and 9% of respondents also reported resigning. Resignation rates were the highest for the 50 to 149 group, which was at 14%. So, not only are therapists seeing more patients in the 50 to 149 groups, but they are also resigning at higher rates, and institutions are not making as much money per therapist. The major reason for resignation was inadequate compensation. Inadequate compensation was also ranked as the biggest reason for seeking professional change. Other notable reasons included looking for a new challenge and more schedule flexibility. Salary for most physical therapists was between $60,000 to $90,000, and 33% made over $90,000. 23% of physical therapists reported making over $100,000, with most of these individuals working in hospital-based institutions. Salary for physical therapist assistants was between $40,000 to $60,000, and 36% of physical therapist assistants had a salary above this range. So, that is a brief summary of rehab trends based on the Web PT report. The full report can be viewed using the link in the bio. Also, you can use the link in the bio to listen to our full-length analysis of the report and learn about strategies to improve your practice. Thank you for watching, and follow us for more videos on physical therapy practice.